The dusty streets of Johnson City, Texas had never seen a woman arrive looking quite so afraid, clutching a single worn carpet bag, as if it contained all the hope she had left in the world. Delilah Fairmont stepped down from the stagecoach on a scorching afternoon in June of 1878, her dark hair pinned severely back, her gray dress deliberately plain. She was 24 years old and already a widow, though the word felt wrong in her mouth. Widows were supposed to grieve. She felt only relief, followed immediately by guilt for that relief, and then a deeper fear that perhaps she was broken inside, incapable of proper feeling. The marriage broker had arranged everything through letters. Delilah had written carefully, keeping her words neutral, describing herself honestly except for the parts that mattered most. She was healthy, able to work, and willing to relocate west. She did not mention the scars on her ribs that never quite stopped aching when the weather turned. She did not mention how she flinched at sudden movements or loud voices. She did not mention that her husband had died when his horse threw him during one of his rages, and that she had stood over his body feeling nothing but a terrible, shameful lightness. The man who answered her letter had been equally brief. His name was Garrett Whitmore. He owned a cattle ranch outside Johnson City, and he needed a wife. He was 31 years old and had never been married. He promised a home, food, and respectability. He did not promise affection, which suited Delilah just fine. She had learned that affection could turn sour faster than milk in summer sun. A man stood near the general store, tall and broad-shouldered, his hat pulled low against the glare. As the other passengers dispersed, he stepped forward and Delilah recognized the deliberate way he moved, the careful slowness of someone trying not to startle skittish livestock. "Mrs. Fairmont." His voice was deeper than she expected, roughened by weather and wind. "Yes." She gripped her bag tighter. "Mr. Whitmore," he nodded, reaching for her bag. She jerked backward before she could stop herself, then froze, horrified at her own reaction. This was not how to begin. She forced herself to hold still as he slowly, carefully took the bag from her hands. "The wagon is just over here," he said, his tone unchanged, as if her reaction was perfectly normal. "It is about an hour's ride to the ranch. We can stop if you need anything from town first." "No, thank you." Delilah followed him to a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses. She expected him to climb up first, to let her struggle into the seat on her own as Charles always had. But instead, Garrett set her bag in the back and offered his hand to help her up. His hand was calloused, work roughened, but his grip was gentle, and he released her the moment she was seated. He climbed up beside her and took the reins, clicking his tongue softly to the horses. They pulled forward into an easy trot, and Johnson City fell away behind them. The landscape opened up into rolling hills covered in golden grass, dotted with clusters of mesquite and cedar. The heat was tremendous, but the air smelled clean, sharp with sage and dust. They rode in silence for several minutes. Delilah tried to prepare herself. She knew what came next. They would reach the ranch, he would show her the house, and then he would expect his rights as a husband. They were not yet married, but the law was far away out here, and she had learned that men took what they believed was owed to them. She had already decided not to fight. Fighting only made it worse. "I should tell you about the ranch," Garrett said, startling her from her dark thoughts. "We run about 800 head of cattle. I have 3 hired men who live in the bunkhouse, good men, respectful. Tomas has been with me for 5 years. He is married and his wife Maria helps with the cooking sometimes. Then there is young Pete. He is only 19 but a hard worker. And old Samuel, though he is not actually that old, maybe 45, we just call him that because he has been working cattle since before I was born." Delilah nodded, uncertain what response he wanted. Charles had never cared for her opinions about his business. "The house is not fancy," Garrett continued, "but it is sturdy. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room. There is a good well, the water runs clean and cold. Maria has been keeping the house in order, but she has her own place to care for, so she will be glad to hand those duties over." "I can manage a house," Delilah said quietly. It was the first full sentence she had spoken to him. "I am certain you can." There was something in his voice that made her glance sideways at him. His profile was strong, his jaw shadowed with stubble. He was not handsome in the refined way Charles had been, but there was something solid about him, something steady. "I want you to know," he continued, his eyes on the road ahead, "that we do not have to rush into anything. The marriage, I mean. We can wait until you feel ready. Until you know me better." Delilah stared at him. "The broker said everything was arranged. The arrangements can wait on your comfort." "I do not understand." The words came out sharper than she intended. "Why would you send for a wife if you did not want to marry?" Garrett was quiet for a moment, his hands steady on the reins. "I do want to marry, but I want you to want it too, or at least not to dread it." Something twisted in Delilah's chest. This felt like a trick, like the times Charles had been sweet before turning cruel, as if to prove that hope was foolish. Most men do not care what their wives want. Then most men are fools. Garrett said it simply, as if it were an obvious fact. A marriage where one person is miserable is no marriage at all. It is just 2 people trapped together. The wagon crested a rise, and the ranch spread out before them. The house was low and sprawling, built from local stone and timber, with a wide porch across the front. Behind it stood a large barn, several corrals, and a smaller building that must be the bunkhouse. Cattle dotted the distant hills, dark shapes against the golden grass. It was bigger than Delilah had expected, more prosperous. "It is beautiful," she said, and meant it. Garrett's expression softened slightly. "It is home. I hope it will be yours too in time." He pulled the wagon up to the house and climbed down, then came around to help her. This time Delilah was ready for the gesture and accepted his hand without flinching. The contact lasted only a moment, but she noticed the gentleness again, the careful way he supported her weight without gripping too hard. The inside of the house was dim and cool after the bright heat outside. The main room held a stone fireplace, several sturdy chairs, a table. Simple, but clean. Garrett set her bag down and gestured to a door on the left. "That is the main bedroom. You should take it. I will sleep in the smaller room." "That does not seem right," Delilah said automatically. "You are the owner here, and you are the lady of the house, or you will be. The main bedroom has more space, better light. It should be yours." He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Are you hungry? Maria left some food prepared." Delilah realized she was famished. She had been too nervous to eat much during the journey. "Yes, thank you." "Sit, please. I will bring it out." "I should do that. I am here to keep your house." Garrett paused, looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "You just traveled for days to get here. Sit. Rest. There will be plenty of time for work." He disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Delilah standing uncertainly in the middle of the room. She was not used to sitting while others worked. Eventually, she lowered herself into one of the chairs, perching on the edge, ready to jump up if needed. Garrett returned with 2 plates of cold chicken, bread, and some kind of vegetable relish. He set one before her and took the other to a chair across the table. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was good, better than good, and Delilah had to force herself not to eat too quickly. "The preacher comes through Johnson City once a month," Garrett said. "He was here last week, so it will be a few more weeks before he returns. That gives us time to decide what we want to do." "Why are you being kind to me?" The question burst out before Delilah could stop it. She set down her fork, her hands trembling slightly. "I am sorry, I should not have asked." "No, it is a fair question." Garrett set down his own fork, giving her his full attention. "Kindness is all I know. It is how I was raised. My parents ran this ranch together for 30 years, and I never once heard my father raise his voice to my mother. He said she was his partner, his equal, and that any man who treated his wife as less was no man at all." His voice grew quieter. "They both died 3 years ago. Fever took them within days of each other. I miss them every day, but they taught me well." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back hard. She had given up on kindness, had convinced herself it did not really exist between men and women. "My husband was not kind. I gathered that." Garrett's voice was gentle. "You do not have to tell me about it, but I want you to know that whatever happened before, it will not happen here. I give you my word." "Words are easy," Delilah whispered. "Then judge me by my actions." They finished the meal in silence, but it felt different now, less awkward. When they were done, Garrett showed Delilah the rest of the house. The main bedroom was indeed larger, with a wide bed covered in a simple quilt, a dresser, a washstand. The window looked out over the hills. "I will let you get settled," Garrett said from the doorway. "I need to check on the men, make sure everything is running smoothly. Will you be all right here alone?" "Yes," Delilah hesitated. "Thank you for everything." He nodded and left, and she heard the front door close softly behind him. Alone, Delilah sat on the edge of the bed and let herself take a full breath for what felt like the first time in years. The house was quiet, peaceful. Through the window, she could see Garrett walking toward the barn, his gait easy and unhurried. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her 2 other dresses in the closet, setting her hairbrush and small mirror on the dresser. At the bottom of her bag was a book, a collection of poetry that had belonged to her mother. It was the only thing of value she owned. She placed it carefully on the small table beside the bed. The afternoon stretched long and quiet. Delilah explored the kitchen, taking stock of what was there. The pantry was well supplied with flour, beans, coffee, sugar, dried meat. There were jars of preserved vegetables, a crock of sourdough starter, basic spices. She could work with this. She found an apron hanging on a hook and tied it on, then set about making something for supper. It felt good to work, to have a purpose. She mixed biscuit dough and put together a simple stew from the ingredients at hand. As the food cooked, she swept the floors, wiped down the table, straightened things that did not really need straightening. Staying busy kept her mind from spinning in circles. The sun was lowering toward the horizon when she heard boots on the porch. She tensed automatically, then forced herself to relax. Garrett opened the door and paused, taking in the smell of food cooking. "You did not have to do all this," he said, but he looked pleased. "I wanted to be useful." "You do not have to earn your place here, Delilah." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about it made her throat tight. "I do not know how to just be somewhere. I need to work." Garrett nodded slowly. "All right. But there is a difference between working and proving your worth. You are worth plenty just by being here." Delilah did not know what to say to that, so she turned back to the stove. "Supper will be ready soon. I will wash up." They ate together as the light faded outside, and Garrett told her more about the ranch, the rhythms of the work, the land around them. He spoke easily, not seeming to mind that she answered mostly in short sentences. After they finished, he helped her clear the dishes without being asked, which startled her so much she nearly dropped a plate. "My mother always said cooking and cleaning were everyone's work," he explained, carrying dishes to the kitchen. "Just because I run cattle does not mean I cannot wash a dish." That night, Garrett said goodnight and went to the smaller bedroom, closing the door softly behind him. Delilah changed into her nightdress and lay in the big bed, staring at the ceiling. She kept waiting for the door to open, for him to change his mind about being kind, but it never did. Eventually, exhausted, she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The days began to settle into a pattern. Garrett rose before dawn to work with the cattle and the men. Delilah would wake and make breakfast, and they would eat together in the early morning light. Then he would be gone for most of the day, and she would tend the house. She cleaned every corner, washed all the linens, organized the pantry. She baked bread and mended clothes and discovered that Maria had left a small vegetable garden that was in desperate need of weeding. Delilah threw herself into the garden, finding peace in the simple work of it. The earth here was different from back east, harder and drier, but things grew stubbornly anyway. She watered carefully from the well, pulled weeds, staked up tomato plants that were heavy with green fruit. Working in the garden made her feel connected to something real and growing. Garrett always came back for the midday meal, sitting across from her at the table, telling her about his morning. A calf had been born. They had moved part of the herd to a new pasture. Old Samuel had told a ridiculous story about his youth that probably was not true. Garrett talked easily, never pressing Delilah to respond more than she was comfortable with, seeming content with her quiet presence. In the evenings, after supper, they would sometimes sit on the porch and watch the sun set. The sky would turn colors Delilah had never seen back east, wild purples and oranges and reds. Garrett would point out landmarks, telling her about the land. That hill was where he had built his first line shack. That creek ran year-round. That stand of trees was where his father had proposed to his mother. They met in Kansas, he said one evening, his voice soft. She was a schoolteacher. He was working as a trail hand. He said he knew the moment he saw her that she was the woman he would marry, but it took him 6 months to work up the courage to speak to her. When he finally did, she said she had been waiting for him to say something for months. "That sounds like a fairy story," Delilah said. "I suppose it does, but it was real. They were happy together, truly happy right up until the end." He glanced at her. "I know that is not everyone's experience." "No," Delilah agreed quietly. "It is not. May I ask what happened to your husband?" Delilah was silent for a long moment, watching the colors bleed across the sky. "He fell from his horse, broke his neck. He was angry when it happened, riding too hard, not paying attention. He was often angry. Did he hurt you?" She could have lied. She could have kept her secrets. But something about the gentle way Garrett asked, the genuine concern in his voice, made her honest. "Yes, often. I am sorry." He said it simply, without drama but with real feeling. No one should have to live that way. "I thought all marriages were like that. My father was not kind to my mother either. I thought it was just how things were between husbands and wives. It is not." Garrett turned to look at her directly. "Or it should not be. A marriage should be a partnership, respect, kindness, affection if you are lucky, never cruelty." "You make it sound simple." "The principle is simple. Living it takes work, I imagine. But it starts with deciding to be kind and then being kind again the next day and the next." He paused. "I will never hurt you, Delilah. I know you have no reason to believe me yet, but I hope in time you will see that I mean it." Something in Delilah's chest, something that had been clenched tight for years, began very slightly to loosen. The weeks passed. The preacher came and went, but Delilah did not mention marriage, and neither did Garrett. He seemed content to let things continue as they were, and she was not ready to bind herself legally to anyone, no matter how kind he seemed. She needed more time to believe this was real. She met the ranch hands properly. Tomas was a quiet man with kind eyes and a quick smile. His wife Maria was warm and welcoming. insisting Delilah come to their small house for coffee, showing her where the wild herbs grew, sharing recipes and advice about living in this hard land. Pete was indeed young, enthusiastic, and earnest, treating Delilah with an almost comical respect. Old Samuel was gruff, but had a dry sense of humor that made Delilah laugh despite herself. "Boss is different since you arrived," Samuel said one afternoon when he stopped by for water. "Happier. Whistles while he works now." Delilah did not know what to do with that information, so she just offered him more water and changed the subject. One evening, she was in the garden when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. She looked up to see a rider coming hard toward the ranch, dust rising behind him. Fear spiked through her automatically, old instincts kicking in. She stood frozen as the rider pulled up near the house. It was a man she did not recognize, rough-looking, with a scar across his cheek. He dismounted and started toward the house. Delilah intercepted him, her heart pounding. "Can I help you?" She tried to keep her voice steady. The man looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "Looking for Whitmore. He is out with the herd. I can tell him you came by." "I will wait." The man started toward the porch. "I would prefer you wait out here." Delilah moved to block his path without thinking, then immediately regretted it. This was exactly the kind of thing that would set Charles off, but she could not let a strange man into the house when she was alone. The man's expression darkened. "You telling me what to do?" "I am asking you politely to wait outside for Mr. Whitmore." He stepped closer, and Delilah fought the urge to back away. Then she heard more hoofbeats, and Garrett rode into the yard at a gallop, taking in the scene instantly. He was off his horse in one smooth motion, placing himself between Delilah and the stranger. "Crane, what are you doing here? Need to talk to you about that land deal." "You can talk to me out here. The house is private." Garrett's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. Crane's eyes flicked between them. "Right. Just thought maybe we could discuss this inside, have a drink." "No, say what you came to say." Crane clearly did not like being dismissed, but something about Garrett's presence made him back down. "I want to buy that section of land by the creek." "My offer still stands. And my answer is still no. That land is not for sale. You are sitting on prime grazing and doing nothing with it. What I do with my land is my business. You need to leave now." It was not a request. Crane glared but turned and mounted his horse. "You are making a mistake, Whitmore." "That is my choice to make." They watched him ride off. When he was out of sight, Garrett turned to Delilah. "Are you all right? Did he touch you?" "No, I am fine, just startled." "I am sorry." Jack Crane has been trying to expand his ranch and does not like taking no for an answer. He should not have come here when I was not around. I will make sure he knows not to do it again. "I should not have confronted him," Delilah said, her hands still shaking slightly. "I just did not want him in the house." "You did exactly right. This is your home. You have every right to say who comes in and who does not." Garrett's expression was serious. "You are safe here, Delilah. I meant that. From me, from anyone." That night at supper, Delilah asked, "Who is Jack Crane?" "Owns the ranch to the east. His father started it, but Jack ran it into debt. He is trying to buy up land to run more cattle, thinks that will solve his problems. It will not, because his problem is that he drinks and gambles more than he works, but that is his affair." Garrett paused. "He has always been trouble. If he ever comes around again when I am not here, you just come get Tomas or one of the other men. Do not deal with him alone." "I can handle difficult men," Delilah said quietly. "I know you can. I saw that today, but you should not have to." Something about those words settled deep in Delilah's heart. You should not have to. It had never occurred to her that she should not have to handle things, that someone might want to protect her not because she was weak, but because she mattered. August arrived with crushing heat. The work on the ranch intensified as they prepared for the long drive to market in the fall. Garrett was gone longer hours, coming back exhausted and covered in dust. Delilah took to leaving water and clean cloths on the porch so he could wash before coming inside. She made hearty meals to fuel the hard work. Baked pies from the preserved fruit Maria shared, kept the house cool and dark during the worst of the heat. She was taking down laundry one afternoon when she heard a commotion from the direction of the barn. Men shouting, the sound of cattle in distress. She dropped the sheet she was holding and ran toward the noise. In the corral, a huge bull was going wild, throwing itself against the fence. Pete was in the corral with it, having apparently been caught inside when the bull went mad. He was trying to get to the fence, but the bull kept cutting him off. Tomas and Samuel were outside the corral, shouting instructions, but they could not get in without making things worse. Garrett came running from the other direction and vaulted the fence in one motion, putting himself between Pete and the bull. "Get out now," he yelled to Pete, and the boy scrambled to safety. But now Garrett was the one trapped with an enraged animal that outweighed him by hundreds of pounds. Delilah watched in horror as the bull charged. Garrett dodged at the last second, grabbing his hat and waving it to distract the animal. He was trying to work his way toward the fence, but the bull kept charging. One hit from those horns would kill him. "Open the far gate." Garrett shouted and Samuel ran to comply. "Get back! Everyone back!" The moment the far gate swung open, Garrett made a dash for it, waving his arms to draw the bull after him. The animal charged, and Garrett dove through the opening, rolling to the side as the bull thundered past him into the larger pasture. Samuel slammed the gate shut. For a moment, everyone stood frozen. Then Garrett got to his feet, brushing himself off. "Everyone all right?" "You nearly got yourself killed," Pete's voice was shaking. "But I did not. We are all fine." Garrett's eyes found Delilah, still standing frozen by the barn. Their gazes locked and something passed between them, something that made Delilah's breath catch. He could have died. She had just watched him risk his life to save a young ranch hand, and the thought of him being hurt, being killed, made something inside her break open. This was not gratitude or obligation. This was something much more dangerous. That evening, Delilah's hands trembled as she made supper. Garrett came in, washed and changed, and they sat down to eat. She could barely taste the food. "That was foolish today," she said suddenly. "You could have been killed. Pete could have been killed. I could not let that happen. So you risked yourself instead. I have more experience. I knew what I was doing. That bull did not care about your experience." Delilah heard her voice rising and tried to control it. "You could have died, and then what? What happens to the ranch, to your men? What about?" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "What about what?" Garrett asked gently. "What about me?" The words came out small, almost ashamed. "I know I have no right to ask that. I am not your wife. I am just someone you took in out of kindness. But I do not want you to die, Garrett. I realize I truly do not." Garrett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You are not just someone I took in. You are important to me, Delilah. More important than I have the right to say, given that you have not promised me anything. But it is the truth." Delilah met his eyes across the table. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I am afraid to trust this, to trust you. Every time I let myself think maybe things can be different, I remember how it was before, how he would be kind sometimes, just to make it hurt worse when he was cruel. I understand that. I do. And I will wait as long as you need." He hesitated. "But I need you to know I am not him. I will never be him. The way I am now, the kindness I show you, this is not an act. This is who I am all the time. There is no other version waiting to hurt you. How can I know that?" "Time," Garrett said simply. "Give it time. Let me prove it to you day after day until you cannot doubt it anymore." Delilah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I think I am falling in love with you, and it terrifies me." Garrett stood and came around the table slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she stayed still, he knelt beside her chair, taking her hand carefully in both of his. "I fell in love with you weeks ago. The way you tend the garden like those plants are precious treasures. The way you hum when you bake bread. The way you stand your ground even when you are afraid. You are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met, and I am honored that you are here." "I am not brave," Delilah said through her tears. "You are. Bravery is not the absence of fear. It is doing things despite the fear. You were terrified when you stepped off that stagecoach, but you did it anyway. You are facing your fears every single day by staying here, by letting yourself consider happiness again. That is real courage." Delilah looked at their joined hands, his large and work-roughened, hers smaller but just as marked by labor. "I want to marry you," she said quietly. "I want to be your wife, truly, but I need you to understand that I am damaged. I may always be afraid sometimes. I may always flinch. Then I will spend the rest of my life showing you that you are safe. I will move slowly and speak softly and prove every day that you can trust me. We all have scars, Delilah. Yours are just from a different kind of battle than mine. They do not make you less. They make you who you are." She turned her hand in his, gripping back for the first time. "When can we marry? The preacher will be through in 2 weeks, if you are certain." "I am certain of you. That is enough." Garrett lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, so gentle it barely registered. "Thank you for trusting me." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Maria helped Delilah make over her best dress, adding new trim and buttons. Tomas and the men cleaned the barn and strung lanterns for a small celebration after the ceremony. Garrett rode to Johnson City and came back with a simple gold band that had been his grandmother's. The night before the wedding, Delilah stood in her bedroom, looking at herself in the small mirror. Her dress was gray silk, the best she had, with cream lace at the collar and cuffs. She looked older than 24, she thought. Life had marked her, but there was something different in her face now, a softness that had not been there before. A soft knock came at her door. "Delilah, may I come in?" "Yes." Garrett entered, keeping his distance respectfully. He held a small wooden box. "I wanted to give you this tonight. It was my mother's." Delilah opened the box to find a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a flower. "It is beautiful. She wore it on her wedding day. My father gave it to her. I would be honored if you would wear it tomorrow." "I will, thank you." Delilah hesitated. "Are you certain about this, about me? You could have any woman, someone without a past, someone undamaged." Garrett shook his head. "I do not want any woman, I want you. Your past is part of you, but it does not define you. And you are not damaged, Delilah. You are a survivor." He paused. "Tomorrow, when we marry, I will make you a vow. I will spend every day of the rest of my life making you happy. That is my promise to you." "I promise to try to let you," Delilah said. "I promise to work on trusting. I promise to build a life with you. That is all I ask." He left, and Delilah lay in bed, the necklace clutched in her hand. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt genuinely happy. It was a strange feeling, almost overwhelming, but good. So good. The wedding took place in the ranch house parlor the next afternoon. The preacher arrived at noon, a kindly older man who had been traveling this circuit for 20 years. Maria decorated the room with wildflowers from the hills, and their scent filled the air. Tomas, Maria, Pete, and old Samuel stood as witnesses, dressed in their Sunday best. Delilah wore her gray dress and her mother's silver necklace. Her hands shook only slightly as Garrett took them in his. He looked handsome in a dark suit she had not seen before, his hair neatly combed, his expression solemn. The preacher began the ceremony, speaking about love and commitment and partnership. When he asked if Garrett would take Delilah as his wife, Garrett's "I will" rang out clear and strong. When it was Delilah's turn, her voice was quieter, but she meant it with everything in her. "I will." They exchanged rings, Garrett sliding the gold band onto her finger with such care that she felt tears sting her eyes. Then the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, and Garrett looked at her questioningly. "May I kiss you?" The fact that he asked, that he gave her the choice, meant everything. Delilah nodded, and Garrett cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her. It was soft, tender, nothing like the rough demand she had known before. It was a promise in itself. Their friends cheered, and Maria cried happy tears. They all moved outside where tables had been set up with food and drink. There was music from a fiddle Pete had produced, and old Samuel turned out to be surprisingly light on his feet for a man who spent his days in the saddle. Garrett danced with Delilah as the sun set, holding her carefully, leading her through the simple steps. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Delilah said, and realized it was completely true. "I am happy." As night fell, the party wound down. Maria hugged Delilah tight. "You are good for him," she whispered, "and he is good for you. Be happy." Finally, they were alone. Garrett walked Delilah to the bedroom door, the main bedroom that had been hers alone until tonight. He paused outside. "I meant what I said about going at your pace," he said quietly. "We are married now, yes, but that does not mean anything has to change tonight. We can wait until you are ready." Delilah looked up at him, at this man who had shown her nothing but kindness, who had proven day after day that his gentleness was real. She was still afraid. Some part of her probably always would be, but she did not want fear to rule her life anymore. "I am ready," she said. "Or as ready as I will ever be. I trust you, Garrett." His expression softened. "We will go slow. If you want to stop at any time for any reason, you just say so. Promise me." "I promise." What followed was nothing like Delilah's previous experience of marriage. Garrett was patient, gentle, constantly checking that she was comfortable. When she tensed, he paused. When she relaxed, he continued slowly. He seemed more concerned with her comfort than his own pleasure, which was so foreign to her that she almost did not know how to respond. Afterward, he held her carefully, stroking her hair. "Are you all right?" Yes, Delilah found that she meant it. For the first time, intimacy had not been something to endure but something shared. That was different, different good or different bad, good, surprising but good. "It will get easier," Garrett said quietly. "As you learn to trust that I will never hurt you, as you relax into it, there is no rush." Delilah pressed her face against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you for being patient with me. Always." They fell asleep tangled together, and Delilah did not wake once during the night. No nightmares, no fear. Just deep, peaceful rest. The next months passed in a haze of happiness that Delilah still sometimes could not quite believe was real. She and Garrett settled into married life, learning each other's rhythms and habits. She discovered he liked his coffee strong and black, that he hummed tunelessly when he was concentrating, that he always made sure she ate enough before worrying about his own portion. He learned that she woke early and liked to watch the sunrise, that she had a talent for growing things, that she could be funny when she felt safe enough to relax. The ranch work continued through fall. The cattle drive to market was successful, bringing in enough profit to see them comfortably through winter and beyond. Garrett gave bonuses to all the men, insisting they had earned it. He was a fair boss, tough when he needed to be but never cruel, and his men were loyal because of it. Winter came, cold and sometimes harsh. The first time a blue norther blew through, dropping temperatures 40 degrees in a matter of hours, Delilah worried about the cattle. Garrett and his men worked around the clock to make sure the herd survived, bringing the weakest animals close to the barn, breaking ice on water troughs, distributing feed. Delilah kept hot coffee and food ready at all hours, and the men were grateful. One evening during a fierce storm, Garrett came in nearly frozen. Delilah made him strip out of his wet clothes and wrapped him in blankets, rubbing warmth back into his hands. "You work too hard," she scolded, says the woman who has been cooking and keeping watch for 3 days straight. But he smiled as he said it. They sat by the fire, Garrett's head in Delilah's lap as she stroked his hair. "I love you," she said quietly. It was still hard to say, those 3 words carrying so much weight, but they were true. "I love you too, so much." Garrett turned to look up at her. "You are my whole world, Delilah. Everything I do for us, for the life we are building." "What kind of life do you see for us?" "Looking ahead, I see children if we are blessed with them. I see this ranch growing, becoming something we can pass on. I see us old and gray sitting on that porch watching the sunset like we do now. I see happiness, a lot of it." He paused. "What do you see?" "I see the same thing," Delilah said softly. "It still scares me sometimes how much I want it. I keep waiting for it to be taken away. It will not be. I am not going anywhere, and I will do everything in my power to keep you safe and happy. That is my purpose now." In February, Delilah realized she had missed her monthly courses. Once, then twice. She waited to say anything, not wanting to raise hopes too soon. But as the signs became unmistakable, she could no longer deny it. One evening, after Garrett had finished his supper, she took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something." He looked up, immediately attentive to the seriousness in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I am expecting a baby." Garrett's expression went through several changes at once. Shock, joy, fear, more joy. "Truly, truly. I am about 3 months along, I think. It should come in August." He stood and came around the table, kneeling beside her chair like he had that night months ago. "A baby. We are going to have a baby." His hands shook slightly as he took hers. "Are you happy about this? I know it must be frightening." "I am happy," Delilah said, surprised to find it was true. "I never thought I would be a mother. Charles always said I was too weak to carry a child properly, but I am not afraid now, not with you. You are the strongest person I know, and you will not be alone in this. I will be with you every step." Garrett was true to his word. As Delilah's belly swelled through spring and into summer, he was endlessly attentive. He took over the heavier household tasks without being asked, brought her water constantly, rubbed her swollen feet in the evenings. When she felt ungainly and unattractive, he told her she had never been more beautiful. When she was tired and uncomfortable, he held her and told her how brave she was. Maria shared advice from her own pregnancies, helping Delilah prepare. They made tiny clothes together, washed and folded blankets, set up a cradle that had been in storage since Garrett was a baby. The men treated Delilah like precious porcelain, rushing to help with anything that looked remotely heavy, which would have been annoying except that their concern was so genuine. August arrived hot and heavy. Delilah felt huge, uncomfortable, ready to meet this child who had been kicking her ribs for weeks. One evening, as she and Garrett sat on the porch, the first pain hit her. She gasped, and Garrett was instantly alert. "Is it time?" "I think so." He had been ready for days. He ran to get Maria while Delilah breathed through another pain. Within the hour, Maria was there, and they had sent Tomas racing to Johnson City to fetch the doctor, though they all knew he might not arrive in time. Labor was long and difficult. Delilah had heard stories but had not truly understood the reality of it. Pain came in waves, overwhelming, relentless. Garrett stayed with her despite Maria's protests that this was women's work, holding Delilah's hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, telling her she was strong, she could do this. "I cannot," she gasped at one point, exhausted and afraid. "You can. You are doing it. Just a bit more, my love, just a bit more." The doctor arrived an hour before the baby did, which was fortunate because there were complications. The cord was wrapped, and Delilah was too tired to push effectively. But with the doctor's help and Garrett's constant encouragement, she finally heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. "A boy," the doctor announced, placing the squalling infant on Delilah's chest. "A healthy boy." Delilah looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect. "A boy," she repeated wonderingly. Garrett was crying openly, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "He is perfect. You did so well, Delilah, so well." They named him James after Garrett's father. Jamie for short. He had Garrett's dark hair and Delilah's blue eyes, and from the moment he entered the world, he was loved beyond measure. The first weeks were exhausting. Jamie needed to eat constantly, and Delilah was sore and healing. But Garrett helped with everything. He changed diapers and walked the floor with Jamie when he cried and brought Delilah food when she was too tired to leave the bed. He sang to Jamie in a low, rumbling voice, old songs his own father had sung to him. "You are wonderful with him," Delilah said one night, watching Garrett rock their son. "I am just following my father's example. He always said children need tenderness, not toughness. Time to be tough will come later. For now, Jamie just needs to know he is loved. He is so loved." As Jamie grew from a newborn to an infant, the ranch continued its rhythms. Pete and old Samuel competed to make the baby laugh. Tomas carved wooden toys. Maria knitted blankets. It took a village, and Delilah was grateful for every bit of help. When Jamie was 6 months old, Delilah realized she was pregnant again. This time she was not surprised, and neither was Garrett. They had talked about wanting a large family, children who would fill the house with noise and love. "Are you happy?" he asked, his hand on her still flat belly. "Exhausted at the thought," Delilah admitted. "But yes, happy." Their second son was born the following June, an easier birth than the first. They named him Thomas after Tomas, who cried when he heard. Tommy was quieter than Jamie had been, more contemplative, but just as loved. The years passed in a blur of children and ranch work and love. Their third child was a daughter, born when Jamie was 3 and Tommy was 18 months. They named her Rose, and she was fierce from the moment she took her first breath, all determination and strong will. Then came another boy, Samuel, named for old Samuel, who had passed away peacefully in his sleep the winter before. And finally, when Delilah thought surely they were done, twin girls arrived, Lucy and Grace, who were identical except that Lucy had a small birthmark on her left shoulder. 6 children in 8 years. The house was chaos, full of noise and laughter and occasional tears. Garrett expanded the house, adding more bedrooms, a larger kitchen. He hired more ranch hands as the herd grew, and several of them brought families, so a small community grew up around the ranch. Through it all, Garrett remained steady, kind, present. He was up in the night with sick children. He taught the boys to ride and rope. He was gentle with Rose's fierce independence and patient with Lucy and Grace's endless questions. He made sure Delilah knew she was appreciated, loved, essential. On their 10th anniversary, they found themselves alone for the evening, the children staying with Maria and Tomas. They sat on the porch like they had so many times before, watching the sunset paint the sky. "You remember when you first arrived?" Garrett asked. "You looked so afraid." "I was terrified, of you, of this place, of everything. And now this is home, you are home. I cannot imagine being anywhere else." Garrett pulled her close. "I told you once that kindness was all I knew. That was not quite true. I had to learn some things too. How to be patient when I wanted to push. How to wait for trust instead of demanding it. How to love someone who had been hurt and needed time to heal." "You made it easy," Delilah said. "You never wavered. Even when I was difficult, even when I was afraid, you were constant. You proved every single day that I was safe with you. You were never difficult. You were healing. That takes time." He kissed the top of her head. "I would wait 100 years for you if I needed to, but I am glad I did not have to." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence as the light faded. Inside, they could hear the children returning, their voices rising in excitement as they came home. Jamie was telling some story, his voice high and animated. Rose was arguing with him about something. The twins were singing. Tommy was laughing. Samuel was asking endless questions in his serious way. "Sounds like chaos," Garrett said, but he was smiling. "Sounds like family," Delilah corrected. They went inside together, into the warm light and noise, into the life they had built together through kindness and patience and love. Jamie crashed into Garrett's legs, demanding to be picked up even though he was really too big for it now. Rose grabbed Delilah's hand, pulling her toward something vitally important. The twins were showing off new tricks. Tommy and Samuel were arguing over a toy. Delilah looked around at the beautiful chaos, at the children who were healthy and happy and had never known anything but love and security, at the husband who had proven day after day, year after year, that kindness was not a weakness but a strength. She thought about the terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 12 years ago, certain she was walking into another prison. She had been so wrong. She had walked into freedom, into love, into home. That night, after all the children were finally asleep, Delilah and Garrett lay in bed together, exhausted but content. "Thank you," Delilah said quietly. "For what?" "For being exactly who you said you were. For being kind when I expected cruelty. For loving me when I did not believe I was worth loving. For giving me this life, this family, this happiness." Garrett turned to face her, cupping her cheek in his hand. "You gave me just as much. You made this house a home. You gave me children who are growing up knowing what real love looks like. You showed me that patience and gentleness can heal even the deepest wounds. We saved each other, Delilah." "I suppose we did." They fell asleep tangled together, as they had every night for 12 years and would for many years to come. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. The children grew, each developing their own distinct personalities. Jamie was bold and adventurous, always climbing higher, riding faster, pushing boundaries. He had his father's steadiness underneath the bravado, though, and even as a young boy showed signs of the good man he would become. Tommy was the thinker, always with a book or watching the world with serious eyes. He loved the ranch, but in a different way than Jamie, more interested in the why of things than the doing. Delilah taught him to read early, and he devoured every book they could get from Johnson City. Rose was indeed fierce, refusing to be left behind when her brothers did anything. She rode as well as Jamie by the time she was 6, and could rope a calf by 8. She had no patience for the idea that girls should stay inside and be delicate. Delilah encouraged her independence, even as she taught her the softer skills too. Rose could mend a fence and bake a pie with equal competence. Samuel, named for old Samuel who had been such a steady presence in those early years, had his namesake's quiet wisdom. Even as a small child, he seemed to understand things beyond his years. The ranch hands called him Little Sam and came to him with problems, even though he was just a boy. The twins, Lucy and Grace, were inseparable and mischievous. They developed their own language as toddlers and used it to plot elaborate schemes. They would switch places to confuse people, finish each other's sentences, and generally cause harmless chaos wherever they went. But they were also deeply loving, always the first to notice if someone was sad and needed comfort. When Jamie turned 14, Garrett began teaching him the real business of running a ranch. Not just the physical work which Jamie had been helping with for years, but the financial side, the planning, the decision-making. "Someday this will be yours," Garrett told him. "Yours and your brothers and sisters. I want you to be ready to care for it and for the people who depend on it." Jamie took the responsibility seriously. He started keeping his own books, tracking cattle, learning about breeding and markets. Delilah watched him becoming a man and felt both proud and wistful. Where had the tiny baby gone, the one who used to fall asleep on her chest? One evening, when the children were all occupied elsewhere, Garrett found Delilah in the garden, the same garden she had tended since that first summer. It had expanded over the years, providing vegetables for their growing family and the ranch hands. "You have been quiet today," he observed. "What is on your mind?" "Just thinking about how fast it all goes. Jamie is nearly grown. In a few years, he will be thinking about his own life, maybe his own family." "Does that make you sad?" "A little," Delilah admitted. "But mostly it makes me grateful. I get to see them grow up happy and whole. They do not carry the scars I carried. Because of you, because of us, they know what love should look like." Garrett knelt beside her in the dirt, heedless of his clean pants. "They know because you showed them. You could have let your past make you hard, made you cold. Instead, you chose to love them fiercely to make sure they never felt what you felt. That took courage. I had help. I had you showing me what was possible. We are a team. We always have been." That winter, a harsh one, brought tragedy to their door. Pete, who had been with them since the beginning, now married with 3 children of his own, was killed in a riding accident. His horse stepped in a hole at a gallop, and Pete was thrown, hitting his head on a rock. He never woke up. The whole ranch mourned. Pete had been part of their family, and his death hit hard. Garrett made sure Pete's widow and children were cared for, giving them a house on the ranch and promising Pete's oldest son a job when he was old enough. It was what Pete would have wanted. The funeral was held on a gray day with bitter wind. The whole community turned out. Garrett gave a eulogy, his voice rough with grief. "Pete was barely more than a boy when he came to work here. He grew into a fine man, a good husband, a loving father. He worked hard and lived honestly. We will miss him every day, but we will honor his memory by caring for those he loved, by living with the same integrity he showed." Delilah held Garrett that night as he cried. He did not cry often, but Pete's death had shaken him. "Life is so fragile," he said, "so precious. Every day we have together is a gift." "Then we will treasure every day," Delilah said. "We will not waste a single one." Spring came, as it always did, bringing new life and renewal. The herd increased with new calves. The garden began to sprout. Jamie turned 15, Tommy 13, Rose 11, Samuel 9, and the twins 7. The house rang with their voices and laughter. One afternoon, Delilah was in town with Rose and the twins, buying supplies. As they left the general store, a man approached them. He was well-dressed, slick-looking, and Delilah disliked him on sight. "Mrs. Whitmore?" he asked, tipping his hat. "I am Donald Pierce. I represent some investors back east who are very interested in purchasing your ranch." "The ranch is not for sale," Delilah said firmly. "Perhaps you should discuss it with your husband before deciding. We are prepared to make a very generous offer." "My husband would tell you the same thing. The Whitmore Ranch has been in his family for 30 years and will be passed to our children. It will never be for sale." Pierce's pleasant expression slipped slightly. Times are changing, Mrs. Whitmore. These big ranches are becoming obsolete. Corporations are the future. You would be wise to sell while you can get a good price. We are not interested in your advice or your money. Good day." Delilah took Rose's hand and started to walk away, the twins trailing behind. Pierce called after her, "Your husband would be smarter to listen. Bad things happen to people who refuse good business opportunities." Delilah turned back, fury rising in her chest. She had not survived Charles only to be threatened by some Eastern businessman. "Are you threatening my family?" "Just stating facts, madam. Accidents happen on ranches. People get hurt. Would be a shame if something happened to those children of yours." Before Delilah could respond, Rose stepped forward. At 11, she was already tall and strong, and she had her father's eyes, steady and unflinching. "You just threatened my family. That was a mistake." Pierce actually laughed. "A little girl is going to scare me." "No," came Garrett's voice from behind him. Delilah had not seen him arrive, but suddenly he was there, and he looked dangerous in a way she had never seen. "But I am." Pierce paled. Garrett was a big man, strong from years of hard work, and he looked capable of violence in that moment. "I was just making a business proposition. You threatened my wife and children, in my town, on my land." Garrett's voice was low and cold. "You need to leave. Now. And if you or your investors ever come near my family again, if you so much as think about my ranch, I will make sure you regret it. Am I clear? You cannot threaten me. I have powerful friends. And I have friends too. The sheriff is my cousin. The mayor owes me favors. Every rancher within 50 miles would stand with me because we take care of our own out here. You are outmatched, Pierce. Leave." Pierce looked around and seemed to realize he was indeed surrounded. People had emerged from shops, men Garrett knew, men who worked the land and understood the code of the West. They stood silent but supportive, a wall of solidarity. Pierce left, climbing into his fancy carriage and rattling away. The tension broke and Garrett turned to Delilah. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "No, we are fine, but he was threatening the children." Garrett's jaw clenched. "I heard. He will not bother us again. I will make sure of it." That evening, after the children were in bed, Delilah found Garrett standing outside, staring at the stars. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "You scared me today," she said quietly. "I have never seen you like that. I am sorry. But when I heard him threatening you and the children, I could not control it. I would do anything to protect this family. I know, and I love you for it, but it reminded me that even kind men can be dangerous when their families are threatened." Garrett turned in her arms. "I would never hurt you, never. But I will hurt anyone who tries to hurt you or our children. That is different. I know it is. I trust you completely, Garrett. I have for years now. But in that moment I saw how much you love us, how fiercely you would defend us. It was frightening and wonderful at the same time. You are my whole world, all of you. The ranch, the cattle, none of it matters compared to you and our children. I would burn it all to the ground before I let anyone harm you." Delilah reached up and kissed him. "No one will. We are safe. We have each other, and we have a community that stands with us." Pierce was a bully, but bullies back down when they meet real strength. Rose was fierce today too. Did you see her face? She is her father's daughter, strong and brave and protective. "She is her mother's daughter," Garrett corrected. "You are the strongest person I know, Delilah. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you built a beautiful life anyway. Our children get their strength from you." They stood together under the stars, holding each other, drawing comfort from their closeness. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, the land stretched away into darkness, their land, their home. Nothing would take it from them. The years continued their steady march. Jamie grew into a young man, tall and strong like his father, with his mother's quick mind. At 17, he started courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sweet girl named Emma. Garrett and Delilah watched with amusement as their confident son became tongue-tied and awkward around her. "I cannot figure her out," Jamie complained one evening. "I think she likes me, but then she ignores me at church." "She is making you work for it," Rose said from her corner. At 14, she had a sharp understanding of people. "She likes you fine, but she does not want you to know it yet." "Why not?" "Because if you know she likes you, you will get cocky. Better to keep you guessing." Jamie threw a pillow at his sister, but he was grinning. "When did you get so smart?" "I have always been smarter than you." Watching her children bicker and laugh, Delilah felt a wave of contentment. This was what she had dreamed of in those early days when she was still learning to trust, still afraid the happiness would be snatched away. A house full of love and laughter, children who felt safe enough to tease and play, a husband who was partner and friend and love of her life. Tommy, at 15, announced that he wanted to go to college. "I love the ranch," he said, "but I want to learn more. I want to study agriculture, science, find ways to make ranching more efficient." Garrett was thoughtful. "College is expensive, but if that is what you want, we will find a way. Education is important." They discussed it as a family and decided that Tommy would go to the agricultural college in College Station when he turned 18. It would be hard to lose him, even temporarily, but they wanted their children to follow their dreams. Rose declared she would never leave the ranch. "This is where I belong. I am going to run it with Jamie someday, and I am going to be better at it than he is." "You probably will be," Jamie said without rancor. He and Rose had a strong bond despite their constant competition. Samuel, the thoughtful one, said he wanted to be a veterinarian. "The animals need doctors too. I want to help them." The twins, at 11, were not sure what they wanted but declared they would do it together, whatever it was. Delilah watched her family plan their futures and felt nothing but pride. They were free to dream because they had been raised in love and security. They did not carry the weight of fear and pain that she had carried at their age. That was her greatest achievement, greater than anything else she had ever done. When Jamie turned 18, he asked Emma to marry him. She said yes, and both families celebrated. The wedding was planned for the spring, and the ranch was thrown into preparations. Maria helped with the cooking, sewing, planning. Rose grudgingly agreed to be part of the ceremony despite declaring the whole thing overly sentimental. The night before the wedding, Jamie came to find his parents. They were on the porch, as always, watching the sunset. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. "Always," Garrett said, making room. Jamie sat down, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "I wanted to thank you, both of you, for showing me what marriage should be, what love should look like. I see the way you are together, and that is what I want with Emma. That partnership, that respect, that affection. You gave me a model to follow." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes. "You have a good heart, Jamie. You will be a wonderful husband." "I hope so." He looked at Garrett. "You taught me to be strong but also to be gentle. That real strength is being able to be tender. That is a rare thing." Garrett gripped his son's shoulder. "You will do better than I did. You already have a better start. You are marrying a woman you love, who loves you back, with no shadows from the past. That is a precious gift. I know. I do not take it lightly." The wedding was beautiful. Emma was radiant in her white dress, and Jamie was handsome and nervous in his suit. They said their vows in the ranch house parlor, just as Garrett and Delilah had years before, surrounded by family and friends. When the preacher pronounced them married and Jamie kissed his bride, Delilah leaned against Garrett and felt the circle of life completing itself. "Our baby is married," she whispered. "He is a man now. A good one." Jamie and Emma moved into a house Garrett had built for them on the far side of the ranch. It was smaller than the main house but sturdy and well made. Jamie continued working the ranch with his father, and Emma fit right into the family. Within a year, she announced she was expecting, and Delilah prepared to become a grandmother. "I am too young to be a grandmother," she protested without heat. "You are 38, hardly ancient," Garrett said, "and you will be a wonderful grandmother, just like you are a wonderful mother." The baby, a boy they named James Jr., arrived healthy and strong. Delilah held her grandson and felt the profound joy of seeing her child become a parent. Jamie was gentle and attentive with his son, just as Garrett had been with him. The cycle of love continued. Over the next years, the family continued to grow and change. Tommy went off to college, writing letters home describing his studies and the new world he was discovering. Rose became Garrett's right hand on the ranch, as capable as any man and tougher than most. Samuel apprenticed with the traveling veterinarian who came through their area. The twins grew into beautiful young women, still inseparable, still finishing each other's sentences. Garrett's hair started to gray at the temples, and Delilah found lines on her face that had not been there before. They were getting older, she realized with some surprise. Where had the years gone? But she did not regret a single one. Each year had been a gift, each day a blessing. On their 20th anniversary, Garrett planned a surprise. He arranged for Maria to watch the younger children and Jamie to handle the ranch, and he took Delilah on a trip. They rode out to a spot in the hills where they could see the whole ranch spread below them. "I brought you here for a reason," Garrett said. They dismounted and he spread a blanket under a large oak tree. "This is where I came the day before I sent that first letter to the marriage broker. I sat right here and thought about my life, about whether I was ready to share it with someone. I looked out at this land and thought about how empty the house felt, how lonely I was, and I decided to take a chance." "I am glad you did," Delilah said softly. "I had no idea who would answer. I just hoped for someone kind, someone who wanted the same kind of life I did. What I got was so much more than I dreamed. You made my life complete, Delilah. These 20 years with you have been the happiest of my life." Garrett reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a delicate ring set with sapphires. "I never gave you an engagement ring. I want to remedy that now." Delilah let him slide the ring onto her finger, tears streaming down her face. "It is beautiful. You are beautiful, inside and out. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They lay on the blanket together, looking up at the sky through the oak leaves. Delilah thought about the terrified woman she had been 20 years ago, so sure that she was walking into another nightmare. She had been wrong in the best possible way. "You remember when I told you I was afraid to trust you?" she asked. "That first night we talked, really talked. I remember everything about those early days. I wish I could go back and tell that frightened woman that everything would be all right, that you were exactly who you said you were, that kindness was not a trick, that she could trust you completely. She figured it out eventually. That is what matters. I did, and I have never regretted it, not for a single day." Delilah turned to look at him. "You saved me, Garrett. You gave me a life I never thought I could have." "We saved each other," he said, echoing words from years ago. "I was existing, going through motions. You made me live. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose beyond just working. We are partners, Delilah. We always have been." They watched the sun set from their hilltop, then rode back to the ranch in the gathering darkness. The house glowed with lamplight, and they could hear their children's voices as they approached. Home, Delilah thought. This is home. The years continued. Tommy came back from college with a degree and a head full of ideas for improving the ranch. He and Garrett worked together to implement new techniques, and the ranch prospered. Jamie and Emma had two more children, daughters this time. Rose fell in love with a cowboy who worked on a neighboring ranch, a quiet man named Henry who understood her fierce spirit and loved her for it. They married, and Rose declared she would run both ranches someday, and no one doubted her. Samuel finished his veterinary training and came home to set up practice. He built a small clinic on the ranch and tended to animals from all over the county. The twins, Lucy and Grace, both became teachers, opening a small school on the ranch for the children of the families who worked there. Delilah and Garrett watched their children build their own lives, start their own families, follow their own dreams. The ranch had become almost a small town, with multiple houses, the school, Samuel's clinic, various barns and outbuildings. It was a thriving community built on principles of respect, hard work, and kindness. When Garrett turned 55, he started talking about stepping back, letting Jamie and Rose take over the day-to-day operations. "I am not ready to retire completely," he said, "but I want more time with you. Time to enjoy what we have built without always working." "I would like that," Delilah agreed. She was 48 now, still strong and healthy, but she felt the years in her bones sometimes. More time with Garrett sounded wonderful. They handed over most of the ranch responsibilities to the next generation. Jamie became the primary manager, with Rose as his partner just as she had always planned. Tommy handled the financial and planning side. Samuel cared for the animals. The twins educated the children. It worked beautifully, a family enterprise where everyone contributed according to their skills. Garrett and Delilah finally had time to simply be. They took long rides together, exploring the land they loved. They spent evenings reading together, sitting close. They played with their growing number of grandchildren, spoiling them in the way of grandparents. They traveled occasionally, visiting San Antonio and even going as far as New Orleans once, but they always came home quickly. The ranch was where they belonged. One evening, they were on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained for over 25 years now. Garrett's hair was fully gray now, and Delilah's dark hair was streaked with silver. He still reached for her hand, and she still took it, their fingers interlacing automatically. "You ever think about that first day?" Garrett asked. "When you stepped off the stagecoach looking so afraid?" "Sometimes it feels like another lifetime, another person. In many ways it was. You have changed so much, grown so strong." "I was always strong," Delilah said quietly. "I just did not know it yet. You helped me find that strength, believe in it. You would have found it anyway. But I am glad I got to be there for it." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from decades of knowing someone completely. Finally, Delilah spoke again. "I want to thank you for keeping your promise." "Which promise?" "I have made you many over the years." "The first one." "When you said you would prove your kindness every day until I believed it. You have done that. Every single day for more than 25 years, you have been exactly who you said you were. You never wavered. You never turned cruel. You never gave me reason to doubt." "That is an extraordinary thing, Garrett. It was not difficult. Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done. It meant everything to me. You gave me my life back. You gave me myself back." Garrett raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "And you gave me everything I did not even know I was missing. Purpose, family, joy. We are a good team. The best." Their children and grandchildren began to arrive for supper, a nightly gathering when everyone tried to come to the main house. The porch filled with people and noise and love. Jamie and Emma with their 3 children. Rose and Henry with their 2. Tommy, still unmarried but happy. Samuel with his new wife. The twins, inseparable as always. Grandchildren ranged from baby James Jr., who was now 7, to the newest addition, Rose's 6-month-old daughter. They all crowded around the extended table, passing food, talking over each other, laughing. Delilah looked around at the faces, each one precious, each one loved. This was her legacy. Not just children, but children who knew how to love, who were kind and strong and good. Children who were raising the next generation with the same values. After supper, as people were leaving, Jamie pulled Delilah aside. "Mother, I wanted to tell you something. Emma is expecting again." "That is wonderful news, and I wanted to say thank you for everything you and Father taught me. I see how you are together, and that is what I have with Emma. I am teaching my children what you taught me. That kindness is not weakness. That love is patient. That family is everything. Those lessons came from watching you." Delilah hugged her son, tears in her eyes. "You learned them well. You are a wonderful father and husband. I had the best example." When everyone had finally left and it was just the two of them again, Garrett and Delilah prepared for bed. They moved around each other with the ease of long practice, comfortable in their routines. When they lay down together, Garrett pulled Delilah close. "I love you," he said, as he did every night. "I love you too," she replied, as she had for so many years now. "You have any regrets?" Garrett asked. "About how your life turned out," Delilah thought about it seriously. "I regret the pain of my first marriage. I regret the years I lost to fear. But even those things taught me to recognize and appreciate what we have. So no, I do not think I truly regret anything. My life has been full of love and joy, and that is more than I ever dreamed possible." "Mine too. You made all my dreams come true, Delilah." They fell asleep as they had for more than 25 years, holding each other, safe and loved and home. More years passed. Garrett and Delilah grew older together, their hair turning fully white, their bodies slowing but their love never diminishing. They celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. Their grandchildren grew and started having children of their own. The ranch thrived under the next generation's care, and Garrett and Delilah watched it all with satisfaction. On a warm spring evening, when Delilah was 60 and Garrett was 67, they sat on their porch as the sun set. They had watched thousands of sunsets from this spot, but each one was still beautiful, still precious. "You remember what I said on our first anniversary?" Garrett asked. "I promised to spend every day making you happy." "I remember. You kept that promise. Did I make you happy?" Delilah turned to look at him, at this man who had been her salvation, her partner, her love for more than 30 years. "Happy does not begin to cover it. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You showed me what love really means. You proved that kindness and strength can coexist. You built a family with me, raised children who are making the world better. Yes, Garrett, you made me happy, so incredibly happy. Good. That is all I ever wanted." They watched the sun slip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant colors one more time. Inside, they could hear some of their grandchildren who were staying for a visit, their young voices high with laughter. The ranch stretched around them, solid and thriving, a testament to hard work and love. "I think we did all right," Garrett said quietly, "building this life. We did better than all right. We did beautifully." They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, holding hands, counting their blessings. When they finally went inside, they passed through rooms filled with the evidence of their life together. Photographs on the walls showing the growth of their family. Furniture they had picked out together. Books they had read. Toys their grandchildren had left scattered about, in their bedroom, preparing for sleep. Delilah looked at Garrett and felt a wave of love so profound it took her breath away. After all these years, he could still make her feel this way. Still make her grateful that she had taken a chance on that letter, had stepped off that stagecoach despite her fear, had trusted when trust seemed impossible. "Thank you," she said softly as they lay down together. "For what?" for being my safe place, for being the home I never had, for showing me that kindness is real." Garrett pulled her close, and she nestled against him, fitting perfectly as she always had. "Kindness is all I know," he said, echoing words from more than 30 years ago. "And loving you is the best thing I have ever done." They fell asleep in each other's arms, content and complete. Outside, the ranch settled into the quiet of night. Cattle lowed softly in the distance. A breeze whispered through the grass. Stars wheeled overhead, eternal and beautiful. The life they had built together continued around them, in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, in the land that had been tended with care, in the community that had grown from a single ranch into something larger and more beautiful than either of them could have imagined. Delilah had expected cruelty when she arrived in Johnson City, Texas, all those years ago. She had been prepared for pain and hardship, for a life of fear and quiet desperation. Instead, she found a man who said kindness was all he knew, and then proved it every single day for the rest of their lives together. And in that kindness, in that steadfast, patient, generous love, she had found everything she never dared to hope for. She found home. She found peace. She found joy. She found herself. Their story was one of healing and hope, of second chances and new beginnings. It was proof that love could overcome fear, that gentleness could heal wounds, that it was never too late to start again. And it all began with one simple truth: kindness is all I know. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything,